Okay, maintenance and inspection procedures. This is Launchpad 11. There's 6 questions on the quiz. The FAA exam is not a whole lot of questions on maintenance, although there are questions. So we'll just cover this very briefly here. First off, remember that there were this publication called Advisory Circulars, or AC 107-2, gives general guidance on the operation of small unmanned aircraft systems as far as maintenance and pre-flight inspections, that kind of thing. So that's where you would find this kind of information. And that these advisory circulars are revised from time to time. So it'd be a good idea to check occasionally to see what the latest information is about that. Remember, though, when we get to Class 4 drones or larger, over 55-pound drones, there will be specified airworthiness certificates on these drones, and there will be maintenance programs that the manufacturer will send their program to the FAA. The FAA will approve that. It'll come back to the manufacturer, and the manufacturer will provide that to the users, you and I. And those aren't optional. Right now, we're living in the cowboy age, and basically there's really no specifications except for these general guidelines, which we're about to cover. Okay, so first off, one of the first things, we've talked about that before, 107, careless and reckless operations. It's basically the same regulation as in Part 91 for manned aircraft, but if we fail to perform our own maintenance and or fail to do proper pre-flight inspections, we would, and it crash or some mishap happens, we will be accused of careless or reckless operation, right? And that's prohibited. So just so you know, that's like the catch-all for any kind of violation or any kind of mishap or accident. You're going to be accused of this because you didn't do your due diligence as far as the upcoming flight is involved. So maintenance and inspection in this advisor circular the advisor circular 107-2 is in general about drone operations. Chapter 7 is specific about maintenance and inspection, right? There's 2 kinds of maintenance as far as the FAA is concerned. There's 2 kinds of maintenance. There's scheduled maintenance. Well, we don't have that yet, but that will be part of the larger aircraft that we fly in the future. Unscheduled is part of the same part. It's the stuff that happens that you weren't planning on to happen, okay? Something doesn't work quite properly. It needs maintenance. That's one of the unscheduled maintenance items. Okay, so you have to remember that we are responsible for doing pre-flight inspections. We've talked briefly about that. There is nothing officially published yet, but in the future, when we get these more complex drones, the manufacturer will, again, the same thing as an airworthiness certificate, there will be included in that what is required as far as pre-flight inspections. And so we will have to follow these approved checklists, approved by the manufacturer, approved by the FAA. Right now we don't have them, but this is a future. Pre-flight inspections, everything you need to do before you fly. Obvious things are make sure you have enough battery power or fuel if it's a fueled aircraft. Propeller blades or whatever motors are involved are in proper operating condition. Wear and tear, nothing's going to fall off the drone, and I'm being very briefly talking about it. We've talked a lot more in more detail, but as far as the test is concerned, these are the items. Obviously, memory cards, other things that are important for your operation. And part of pre-flight inspection is also that little hovering maneuver we do. We climb up a couple of feet above the ground and make sure it operates in all different directions that the drone's supposed to operate in, right? All that's part of this pre-flight inspection. The FAA also requests or highly suggests keeping some kind of records I mean, batteries don't last forever, so you might want to keep a record. Some drone manufacturers, you can go into the history of the logs on the drone, and you can find out how many times that battery's been recharged, and that gives you some idea. The drone manufacturers at this point are not telling you that after 15 recharges you need to throw away and buy a new battery. They're not telling us that yet, but there's going to be a lifespan for not only batteries but also the motors as well. How eventually they're going to wear out. You're going to have to replace the motors, and if you start keeping records when they start failing, then you can have some idea about doing some preventative maintenance. In other words, replacing a motor after a number of hours. We don't know yet. If you're going to be a professional drone pilot, you don't want to be out in the field somewhere and all of a sudden a motor quits and you don't have a spare motor handy or a way to replace that motor. So keeping records are important. A typical question here: pre-flight during the pre-flight inspection, who's responsible for determining the aircraft is safe for flight? Obviously, it's not the owner of the aircraft or even the operator, because you don't have to have a license as long as you have a licensed pilot in near proximity. You can be operating it without having a license. The mechanics aren't, for drones at this point, mechanics have no responsibility for that either. So the remote PIC is the one who is responsible. You are, basically. Here's another one. How often is the remote PIC required to inspect the uncrewed aircraft system to ensure that it is in the condition for safe operation? Before each flight. Each flight, the FAA says. So land, change batteries, you need to do another inspection. Obviously, the inspection is going to be a little less thorough than the first time you flew, but it's possible that you picked up a dust or something, or a bird hit it and when you weren't paying attention and one of the blades is somewhat damaged. So before each flight is the idea there. Here's another question. During your pre-flight inspection, you discover that the casing of your UAS battery has expanded beyond its normal dimensions. What action should you take? This is a lesson we did a long time ago, right? It means there's something probably wrong with the battery and it could burst into flames. And now you have a flaming bomb flying through the air, crashing into somebody's backyard, setting fire to the wheat field or something like that, and burning down a whole village, and you ending up in prison for involuntary manslaughter. Yeah, that's maybe overstating the case, but okay, that's not good. You want to intercede, but okay. But to the actual question, you don't throw it away either, because you don't want this burning mass of battery burning in somebody's trash can. You don't want to keep using it. Follow the manufacturer's guidance. Okay, so now there's a principle here. Some of these questions will have, one of the answers will be follow the manufacturer's guidance or something like that. That's almost always the correct answer. So if you come across an answer that says manufacturer's guidance, that's the one you want to click. While preparing your UAS for flight, you notice that one of the propellers has a nick. What action should you take? Well, you look down there and you see the word manufacturer's guidelines. Boop, that's it. You don't even have to think about it. You don't have to read the rest of them. It says remove and replace the propeller, consult. That's B. Remove and replace the propeller. Consult manufacturer guidelines for repair, if any. It doesn't matter that there are no guidelines for most of the consumer drones for propeller nicks. But if there was, it would be a manufacturer guideline. A and C you probably would be something you want to consider if there's no guidelines. Although a quarter of an inch, if the nick is less than a quarter of the length of the blade, that's pretty serious. I'm not sure I'd fly with that one. But repairing it by smoothing it maybe might work. But the answer is B. Okay, here's another one. In which of the following scenarios is the remote PIC not required to perform pre-flight inspection on their UAS? If the subsequent flight occurs immediately, no. Pre-flight inspections are only required for the first flight of the day? No. Pre-flight inspections are required before each flight. Thus, there is no scenario that precludes such an inspection. Okay, so they're coming at that answer from two different directions. We had a question a little bit earlier about this. Now they phrase it in a different way to they're not trying to trick you, but they're trying to make sure you understand the point. Every flight requires a pre-flight inspection of some sort, some more complex than others. Okay, when should the battery for a UAS aircraft be replaced? Here's another question that the answer is obvious. It's either B or C. Per the guidelines, whichever is more restrictive, or C is whichever is least restrictive. What do you think? The FAA is always going to be more conservative. So it's either B or C. When it says more restrictive, then that's going to be the answer. Remember, there's two people here. There's the manufacturer of the drone, but there's also a different manufacturer that manufactures the battery. So, yeah, B. Damaged lithium batteries can cause a fire. We know that. What action should an operator of a UAS take if the manufacturer does not provide information about scheduled maintenance? Okay, here's 99% of our cases are going to be like this. Then B, the operator, you, or whoever is operating the drone, should establish a scheduled maintenance protocol. The NTSB is not going to give you any information about that, or much information about that. They may be able to give you some information, but they're not responsible for this. The FAA, a minimum equipment list, that's something that you will get when you have a drone, Category 4 drone with, or a heavier than 55-pound drone that has an airworthiness certificate. That will give you a minimum equipment list of some sort. B, you're responsible, or at least it is highly recommended that you establish a scheduled maintenance protocol. At this point, not required. Scheduled maintenance should be performed in accordance with the, and again, this is obvious, manufacturer suggested procedures, right? To avoid missing important steps. This is back to crew resource management, human factors, discussions before, checklist, because our minds, we get busy, we forget things, okay? If you have a written checklist that you have right there, you can go through it and just to jog your memory. Oh yeah, I forgot to take the gimbal guard off, and now I'm in the airplane flying around and we're not taking pictures because we can't turn the gimbal. Or whatever. I forgot to screw the propeller blade on properly. Easy. Responsibility for ensuring that a UAS is maintained in airworthiness condition is primarily that of the pilot in command. We're responsible for everything. Not the mechanic, not the owner. When preparing for a flight, you notice that one of the propeller blades has a nick. It sounds like a question we already did. Sorry. The duplicate slide there. Okay, here we go. Which of the following sources of information should you consult first when determining what maintenance should be performed? C, manufacturer guidance.